It's about 6:09, so I'm going to go ahead and start. And if we have some late joiners, then that's great. I'm Sarah Elizabeth LaBarre, and I'm the Executive Director here at Artworks Center for Contemporary Art. Welcome, all of you, and thank you so much, all of you artists, for being a part of this exhibition. I was saying in the beginning when some of you were joining, this is the very first time I've ever curated a national, international juried exhibition. And it's just been really a great learning experience, mostly fun all along. We had over 300 different entries. So Jessica and Jisan had their work cut out for them. Absolutely, went through many rounds trying to figure out what will fit, physically fit even in the space. You know, we had some phenomenal entries of installation pieces that I will definitely hold on to for the future and for invitationals, but they just wouldn't work for this particular exhibition. So I was just floored at the quality of the work that came in. It was really phenomenal. Let's see, you know, I was just saying we've received much attention from the show. When I kind of put together the concept, it was last December, January, before any COVID or, you know, community strife and everything that's happening in our country. And it sort of ended up fitting really well with what's going on right now, for good or for bad. But it's really interesting. I'm viewing all of the pieces in a completely different light than I think I would have 6 months ago, which is really interesting. I'm just gonna go over a quick sort of recap on what the call was, so we can reacquaint ourselves with what we were talking about. My background is in craft. I have a master's degree in fibers, so fibers is sort of my main jam. I love contemporary craft, and I really wanted to put together a show that exemplified that idea of making and materiality, but not just physical materiality, but how material talks to us as makers, how material itself can have an identity and also reflect on our personal identities as makers. And so that was sort of the impetus of this exhibition. How does materiality represent who we are? I'm reading directly from the call. Does the material you use dictate who you are as a maker? I find that, you know, I can say, oh, I'm a fiber artist, but maybe I'm not always using fiber. Is it important to designate yourself as a specific material artist? And so I wanted to explore those questions within this exhibition. I wanted artists to explore the substance of material, you know, taking special care with how what we make sort of situates you within the world and your identity within the world as a maker. So those are all the questions that I was kind of playing with, and then put it out to all of you. Over 300, you know, entries, and so many different avenues and explorations of materiality came in. I think we could probably do 10 different, completely different exhibitions based off of just those simple prompts, because it is so individual. So that's kind of where I was thinking. Let's see. What I'd really like for this discussion, I'm going to open it to one of our jurors who's here with us, Jessica Kooiman Parker from the Derry Arts Center, who's going to talk a little bit about what the jurors and what she specifically was looking for through that call and through the work that came in. And then for those of you, the artists who are here joining, I'd love to give you a few minutes to talk about where you see your piece within this call, how you felt like you sort of fit into those prompts. Maybe did you make work specifically for this, or was this a piece that you thought, I already have something that really might fit into this specific call? And then if you would like to speak to maybe moving forward, what projects you're working on next. We're going to try to keep this whole Zoom talk to about an hour if possible. So we'll see how that goes. And you guys are obviously experienced Zoomers because you're all muted already, which is great. But if you could keep yourself muted and then raise your hand either virtually or on the screen, and we'll move on from there. Any questions before we jump in? Okay, awesome. And again, thank you so much for your contributions to the exhibition. It's amazing experience to learn and see all this artwork from literally around the world. So wonderful. Jessica, I'm gonna open it up to you now.
Sure, yeah, I can speak for myself and what, I was kind of looking for based on what you wrote, Sarah, about the call itself. And, for me, just looking through everything, I, focused a lot on materials and, was there unique materials in there? Like you mentioned earlier, Sarah, we're all so unique. And, so that was one thing that, I focused on the materials first, I would say, kind of, looking through the submissions and seeing, what unique uses of materials there were, and whether it was, maybe it was a familiar material, but used in a new way, or, something that a subject maybe that was something new as well. And so, I kind of started with the material as sort of an entry point, and then from there, dove deeper into the work to kind of see a little bit more about, could I see identity within that material? Specifically, there were some pieces that I almost felt like I could see the person, like it was very clear. There was a, visceral response that said, I can understand. I feel like it's like a little bit of a window into the personality of the person, so then I was like, okay, well, that's obviously, related right to the identity of the artist. And it really showed, it came through very easily. There were others that, it was a little bit more of a mystery that you could kind of, unravel and explore a little bit more. And then obviously the quality of the work and the craftsmanship, makes a big difference. And then, as far as artist statements too, and writing about the work, did that give me more insight to what the artist was trying to show? I am definitely a words person, and I love to, I do give a lot of credit to the artists that are able to produce a piece of work, a stunning piece of work, but then also talk about it in a really compelling way. So for me, those are kind of the parameters and in my head as I was looking through everything. And I'm happy to answer questions too if any of that wasn't clear or you want me to elaborate on it.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on those thoughts? Alicia?
I think that the power of personal narrative, materiality, infused in form is just beautiful, and it's incredibly powerful. And to be able to put the words behind it and the experience, it's like none other. I think I've felt the most powerful marrying all these ideas together. So thank you for having me here. It's just the perfect call for me to talk about like where I've been, what I've done, the experiences I've had, and how I think, this all comes together in my art and the message, and it's awesome.
Thank you, Alicia. Anyone else want to jump in, or should we just ask Alicia since she volunteered to start talking about your work specifically?
So the hats are on exhibition. They're on a beautiful wall. They're highlighted in such a way that if you'd walk up to them, you might think they were real. They're ceramic. They're slip casted. They're made of stone. They're up on the wall behind me. And so the materiality of clay is such that it really helps me to explain my genesis. I started thinking about materiality 2 years ago. It was in a text. Sarah Ahmed said, what does the materiality of your body say about your experiences in this world? How can we understand the materiality of our bodies? Understanding that social norms and all of these things are going to restrict, they're going to give us elevations, they're going to help us, they're going to hinder us. Where are we at in the world, helping and hindering others? And to make something out of clay, I can absolutely say this material reflects just the repeated actions of social norms that have happened on a body. It's a cheap material, it's so diverse, it can be anything. It can look hard, it can look soft, it can be functional, it can be obscured. It's an amazing medium, and it's an honor to have found it and to be able to speak about it. I found this hat, or I was gifted this hat by the Santa Fe Mountain Center in New Mexico. I was in rehab. 2 days ago, I celebrated 4 years of sobriety. And the wonderful ladies that helped me through that ropes course that day, I had asked, do you guys have a hat? It's really sunny out here. They let me go home with the hat. I've carried around this hat, worn it for about 4 years. 2 semesters ago, I said, I want to make a form that looks soft because my professor, Joshua Clark, he's good at that, and I wanted to do it. And it really reflects how fluid my body is and how many demands come upon my body, the materiality. It's incredible. That's really all I have to say. I would love to talk about like all the reasons why I make different forms. This was a pretty difficult form. It's an arm, and I don't think it was able to hang in our show, but to make that form at this time, I thought that form through 2 years ago. And I've been thinking about why all of our lives matter, but specifically why Black lives matter. It's to say her name, to understand intersectionality, to understand why we need to acknowledge slights against bodies, to change. So important to me. So I'm going to shut up. But yes, Black Lives Matter in that fist that could have been in there, which I apologize for. Amazing.
And that show, and those fists are in a new show in Portland, Oregon. Is that correct?
Yeah. Jennifer was able to get them up in a Virum Ultimum for 7th annual Living Mark, and that will go up beginning of or mid-August sometime.
Wonderful. Congratulations on that.
Sorry about that, guys. I got emotional.
No, it's an emotional time, and that was really, really well put. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen quickly so that you can see the hats. Hopefully, let's see. Okay, can everyone see? This is our website, and these are Alicia's hats. We hung them on the wall as if they were hung on hooks on the wall in 3 in a row in the exhibition. And I believe, don't get dizzy, you can see them here against the wall. That might be and here again, the exhibition. But I think most of you have perused these shots. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alicia.
I'm honored to be a part of the show with all of you, and your works are amazing, and thank you.
Second that. Really amazing pieces, yes. Who would like to talk about their work next?
I'll go if nobody else wants.
I was going to say, I'm going to start calling on people. I was a professor, so. Go ahead, Deborah, please.
Well, this is completely ad-libbed, but I work in forms of the book and inspired by the book, but it's morphing into boxes or boxed forms. There's an architectural element because I've worked a lot in the realm of the built environment. And I see a lot of commonality between buildings and books, creation of space, internal and external. But I guess I would say that when I saw the word material in the call, I just responded, because even hearing the word is just so evocative. And I feel like with every passing day, I'm just more passionate about the physicality and the materiality of textures and surfaces of this world. And I just noticed a number of months ago, there was like a paper bag in my studio, and I picked it up and I just sort of crumpled it. And I just sort of got this sensation feeling the crumpled paper in my hands that was just really amazing to feel. And I feel like there's also a lot of oppositional things going on, like a struggle with order and chaos. I'm very interested in the work of Eva Hess and her works that have strings that just sort of drop to the floor and are sort of uncontrolled. And so I'm always trying to go to the borderline of my own obsession with control. I think we all have that, and that whatever we do is kind of playing with that, trying to be safe, even though a lot of people's behavior and actions look very unsafe. I feel like the motivation is to somehow feel in control and feel safe. They're very intertwined, and that has a special poignance and power right now when the word safe is in the news and in people's power lines all the time. So I'll just quickly grab a key. I should have put this in front of the screen, but this was one of the first works that I made in this genre, and it has an accordion spine with covers and canvas pages that sort of just kind of fall, I guess you would say, and then the falling strings. And there's just infinite amount of things that you can do with the string and the stitching, and you can go into words if you want to work that way. It's very, very evocative, and then the layering of materials and so forth. So I just felt like it was just, I think as, is it Alicia who just spoke? Alicia, the woman who just spoke, the person who just spoke, that it was just kind of a shoe, and it was just something that I really responded to. And I think that the pieces also have to do with the body in some way, although they're not necessarily a stand-in for the body, but there's something about the materials and the layering. And although, you know, they're inspired by the form of the book, but there's also a lot of, I think, deeply layered meanings about books and what they mean to us, and the fact that they're an ancient technology and are just so different than the way that we're using all of our electronics, and yet seem to be very meaningful for people. It's almost like a metaphor for the handmade and the material vis-a-vis the digital, that we really crave that, because I know that's what I felt when I crumpled that piece of paper. It was that bag. It was just like a craving to feel that crumpledness and that texture. So I'm thrilled to be part of the show and to hear what all the other artists are going to share. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Deborah. I see Jacob's hand up.
Deborah, I love your work because I'm a book artist. So when I see the book, I was just like amazed by the simplicity and the delicacy of your book. It's just so beautiful. Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
a lot of other artists, like their work just so wonderful. I love it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really like these pieces too. I was thinking of the strings and to me, I was feeling like these were roots that the book is coming from trees, and that these were rooting in some way, and it really gave me an emotional and reaction to that, because trees, um, we share DNA with trees.
That's fascinating. Thank you. I love your hair. I respond to your hair. I think for the same reasons.
All my work is about hair, so I'll get into that.
And people think that, my sister said, well, it looks like hair. And sometimes when I'm trimming those strings, I feel like maybe I should get a little salon training or something. So, I mean, there's a lot of associations, I think, that we have to anything visual.
Is it Theta? Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, it's Theta.
Theta, would you like to speak a little bit more about your pieces and the hair? Really phenomenal.
Thank you so much. These are the result of a community art project that I've been working on for the last few years, where I invite people to the studio to come and have a conversation about hair, their relationship to hair. And ultimately it leads to a conversation about identity and race that is non-confrontational. Literally prior to everything that's going on, a lot of the microaggressions and experiences that I've had were not things that I would really be able to talk about because I would be told I was being over emotional, or oh, that's all in your head, that didn't really happen. And the way I've been processing that is by knotting and finger weaving and finger knitting and using macrame and crochet techniques. It's a very meditative process. I teach people how to do it. They bring materials of their own. They use materials that I have. I mostly use found materials or donated materials. I really don't buy anything. The doorman of my building is always commenting on, somebody dropped off another bag of garbage for you. And it may look like garbage to other people, but to me, they're all beautiful things that have memories imprinted upon them. And in the process of turning the weft and doing the knots, as I'm teaching people, we're having a conversation, and you can see how their mental state shifts and change over the course of the afternoon we spend together. And you literally can see it in the rope. And one of the things I didn't even realize would be part of my experience would be the going back and running my hands over the ropes and remembering the moments, the conversation, literally the smells in the room, somebody's perfume, or them being present in that moment. And I realized that what we were doing was imprinting code. And this work came out of a conversation that happened because in New York, riding the train, random people would come up to me and just start touching my hair. And they're like, oh, your hair's so cool. And then next thing I would know, their hands would be in my hair. And, you know, prior to no one going on the train, which is a whole nother conversation, you can't really escape that when someone's coming at you. And it was such a personal violation, and in a way in which I was being fetishized, and people didn't realize it. And that's when I decided I wanted to do this work with people to be able to have the conversation, because everyone has hair or a story about hair, even if you've lost your hair. And some of the conversations that have come up are extraordinary, the things that people share. I literally had a woman whip her wig off her hair and talk about she's going through cancer treatment and she lost her hair. And her friend that was there with her didn't even know. And so we have a lot of sort of stress around our hair and how it's tied to our identity. And through this work, all of that dissipates.
I
had a question. Oh.
Are you influenced by, I mean, the work itself, as you mass together the strands, And I don't know that much about specific kinds of work from different cultures, but it does feel like I wondered if you were influenced by any forms of African art or culture or any sort of art from many times in history or other countries.
Absolutely. That's a good question. There's a tradition of braiding, hair wrapping, and weaving that goes back to Africa from the very beginning. I was supposed to be in Nairobi right now in July for a residency to work on with women to learn their hair weaving techniques. In a lot of cultures, this is definitely a part of the culture. Even like the Incas, they would tell, it's called kipachu, where they would keep track of, like an abacus, to keep track of births and how many rainy days were through the series of knots. If you see crochet, that is throughout pretty much every tradition. There is some sort of knitting, knotting. So a lot of it has to do, in essence, of hair. Like if you take the hair of animals to weave clothes, it all is related to hair in a way. Particularly in the African tradition, there is a style of, you can look at a woman and see the braids in her hair and know what tribe she's from, how wealthy she is, whether she has children, married, divorced. You know something about her status in her society, all through how she adorns herself with her hair.
See, looking at the work and then hearing you express how it came together, it leaves me kind of questioning, how were you able to unify it so well? Because normally when I bring groups of people together and let them touch materials, it's like this clash of like colors. Like, how much were you sort of inputting yourself into that? Or do you have multiple strands layered so that you can have those bits of like green little puff balls throughout the form, as well as like a certain kind of knot? Because how'd you pull that off? How did you pull you off with that?
Well, it's funny. There's a certain amount of having to let things go, which for me is incredibly good, because, you know, if you do knitting or any of that, you know, it's math. You get the numbers right. It's fucked up if it's not. So the letting go to allow other people make the contribution to me is actually incredible, because then I'm not, like, I get to not be in charge. But what I do is I pick colors ahead of time. I think about what conversation I want to have with people in the studio. And, you know, I close my eyes and I think, what are the colors that illustrate that? And I pull all of that out and I pre-cut things and I leave it all on the table and I see what people gravitate to. So you know, it may be, there's a little cacophony in there, but then afterwards, when I'm going back through and I'm sort of tacking things down or sewing things in or knotting things off to make sure it doesn't fall apart, I'm looking at color, story, and trying to like connect those dots. But I don't really go and add anything outside of what I've already pulled out for that session in that day.
That's a good, I mean, I imagine a lot of us feel the same way about control, because I am very struck by all of the work in the show. I can only imagine how many knots, little rivets, little tight twisting. I mean, every piece has a meticulous nature of like tapping down something that's supposed to be frayed or broken or repetitive. And it's, you know, I felt unity when I looked at that work, even though I saw the struggle. And I think you did a good job of balancing that. Good job.
Thanks. Thank you. There's easily 80 to 90 hours in each of these ropes.
I imagine more, but it's just that repetitive. I mean, I'm taken back to friendship bracelets as a kid, just tying knots and like, you know, filling boxes for no reason, just because I needed to tie that many knots. But it's great work.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
I had one quick question. Well, I've got a few more, but so how do you choose the people in the group and how many do you normally have? And then just one small clarification on the scale. As we're looking at the digital images, I can read the dimensions, but I'm also just curious, like the diameter. Is it like the scale of, what is the scale of the small strands?
When I work with other people, I've chosen to work on 100 feet of rope. So the works that I do by myself without other people, I purposely decide 100 feet of rope is what I'm going to do with people, and all other sizes, that's me working on the rope. Dimensions change depending on the installation. I usually, once I'm done with the rope, I will drape it a number of different ways to create figures, or to, there's little hidden Easter eggs related to the conversation that we were having during the making of the rope. And so I will drape and try to create that form. And then either I will knot it, I use zip ties, or ways in which to sort of tack the rope so it stays in that form. And in some of the ropes, like wax hair colors, there's 2 different ways it could be hung. So when I deliver works, I usually deliver installation instructions that have, based on what I've done in the research for the location, whether it has tall ceilings, shorter ceilings, where it's going to be hung from the ceiling or on the wall, however it might be displayed, and prepare the installation instructions so that it fits in the space but still has the integrity of what I originally intended with the piece. So it could be, I'd say, this round or this tight. I'm trying to have more loosely draping the ropes. The tighter the drape, it looks like a noose, and I really don't want that to be how it reads. Although I have gotten some notes from people saying, since everything that's gone on, some of the pieces read in that way for them. So, I'm conscious of that, and then very giving thought to, well, should it be that for the context of the show? But in this instance, that's not what my intention was. So I draped the pieces and knotted them in a way so that it wouldn't give you noose.
Thank you. Yeah, it's incredible. And how do you choose the group, and how many are normally in the group?
Oh, wow. I email, I post, I Facebook, I Instagram, I do an open call.
Oh, wow,
I
cool.
usually plan these months in advance and put the dates out there so that it gets on
Awesome.
Google. I've had the local radio station talk about it. I never know who's going to walk through the door.
And do you always use everyone that participates hair in the work?
Anyone who wants to give me their hair will. Anyone that brings yarn, or they might bring I have this torn t-shirt, we'll cut up and we'll make t-shirt yarn. I'll teach them how to do all of that. I get on a weekly basis people mailing me their hair.
I was gonna ask that too.
Yeah, I got some hair today. I literally had people mailing me their hair, or I cut off my hair, or someone who was wearing a wig because they were going through cancer treatment, but now their hair has grown back. They've sent me their wigs. I incorporate that into the work. So whoever wants to give me stuff, I'll just use it.
Nice. Well, I'm postpartum, so I am like losing my hair clumps and clumps every day. So now I feel like I can actually, I'm going to send you some. Thank you so much.
I have a long-haired cat. I brush my cat every day. So yeah, if you're allergic to cats, don't come anywhere near my pieces.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think Jacob was raising his hand there for a minute.
Oh, yeah, I just want to say, like, after you sing, it's like a project with the community. I just love it so much more. It kind of reminds me like how when I was little, I always like doing my cousin's hair. I always braid it. So it's kind of like we're always like sharing this intimacy, sharing this like a conversation. So it's more than just like an activity. It's an engagement. It's communication. So like just like Jessica said, like I have longer hair now, so I have long hair. So like I lose a lot of hair too. So I have been collecting them too. So I just love that work. Yeah, beautiful work. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. the art of conversation is something that has been lost in many ways, right? So being able to bring that in as part of it, and it's really about placemaking, creating a space and an opportunity to talk about things. Some of the things are challenging for people, and it's also incredibly healing. And it was not even something I set out to do, but it's something I discovered that occurs. And now that, you know, now that I know that, it's definitely something I'd like to bring into more communities. This is definitely something I go into certain inner city communities where there's a lot of struggle. I don't know if you guys saw on the national news in January, there was a horrible incident. There's gentrification happening in Jersey City in a long time Black neighborhood that the Hasidic Jews are moving into, and there were some people that went in and shut up a kosher grocery store. The mayor asked me to actually come and do this work in that community to bring people together to be able to talk about hair, talk about tradition and identity. And it was really great to be able to actually, like, I'm getting extra hands to work on a piece, but to create a space for people to have those kind of conversations, to bring healing into neighborhoods and into communities. And I didn't even know that that's what I was doing until it just kind of became a thing. Yeah, I feel incredibly fortunate.
Thank you, Theta. That's brilliant. It brings so much even more to the work, knowing that background and the stories. As you were talking, it really strikes me how many of the pieces in this exhibition are of or related to the body, and especially Whitney's pieces. Whitney, do you want to talk a little bit about your fiber pieces, and I'll share your work on the screen?
Sure. So most of my pieces are made with secondhand quilts. I find them in auction homes, thrift stores, antique malls, anything that was once owned by somebody else and has a history behind it is a material that I use. Most of my work is more psychological, dealing with the coping mechanisms and kind of bringing them out using these materials. Especially with Nikki Waited. I started this series halfway through my BFA, and I actually didn't know about material identity. It just kind of, I stumbled upon it while looking for some shows. And halfway through my BFA, I actually started using quilted materials, something that was easy for me to showcase coping, as I do work in the mental health field currently. And I was at that point dealing with an illness that left me bedridden and trying to deal with the future and how I was going to do art. So Nikki Waited is probably more of how this all started, this series started, stemming from my own experiences. And then I expanded outward and I started to look at the community of which I worked for and started to kind of recreate pieces that how I perceived they were coping with things, or maybe some other people may not understand how they're coping, but this is something that they understand and this is how they cope with things. And so I'm still trying to expand my pieces and my series, but that's kind of about it.
I'm excited to see where that series takes you, Whitney. I think you're off to a really interesting investigation, and the way that your pieces are related to the body. It's that direct idea of, yes, material identity, but as you're talking, I mean, there's so many layers to that, pun intended, I guess. But yeah, I think there's something about how material does hold that memory, and what Theta was talking about, especially with fibers, but really with all materials, I think humans have this really strong visceral connection to touch and materiality. And so, yeah, I think each piece in the exhibition really does speak to that in its own way. Who else has not had a chance to speak about their work?
I'll go.
Julie.
Hi, everybody. And those of you that spoke already, thank you so much. I just loved hearing what each of you had to say. I really did. And Alicia, good job, 4 years. And that's just so awesome. Good job. And I want to just start by saying thank you. I'm so really impressed with this work, and I'm really honored to be considered amongst you. So thank you all. I had the chair sculptures, and I have a background in martial arts and psychology, but the chairs are really the idea that they're all based around the idea of legs as a foundation, and really kind of commenting on the anxiety of our current age that really, as I see it, comes largely from isolation and detachment. And isolation and detachment can lead to ignorance. You know, this chair on the right is called comfortably dumb. It's kind of like burying your head in the sand. The one on the left, talking without listening. You know, and that's how it feels to me, whether in a family dynamic or, you know, you see in our country, it hurts when everyone wants to be heard and understood, and everyone has a legitimate point, even if they're expressing themselves in angry and ugly ways. Underneath, there's some person in there, and this is what it feels like to me. And I like that one can use materials for deep, pervasive feelings we all have, but that really escape language sometimes. Something deeper and more painful or profound than language, as I see it. And I like that material can convey a message that it doesn't, I think all people can relate to, no matter what age, culture, etc. But getting back to the martial arts, just this idea of being off kilter, of not having a firm foundation, and born of detachment and isolation. I have one other chair sculpture, maybe it's above. This was part of a series that I did where I actually had some matador paintings also, and the common visual theme or formal theme was the red. You know, since that kind of spurs the bull on, the red, you wave the red cape. But like in this piece here, you can see that the leg joints mirror the hoof and the leg joints of the bull. And really what I'm commenting on in the whole collection of work is the victimizer and the victim. And I think that both suffer in some way. I think you can't do damage to someone or something external to yourself without suffering also. And certainly as the one on the receiving end of damage, you're suffering too. So that was kind of what this work was about holistically. But I really like, I like that I like the idea of using material to convey something more elemental and more distilled down beyond language itself.
Julie, I just want to say that seeing your work was definitely, you know, the talking without listening was, you know, one of the things I talked about being like, you know, a visceral response. It was so obviously like, just, you really nailed it, you know. I mean, it really does send that message of a disjointed conversation where nobody's listening. And you know, I went all the way through to my thoughts of where we are as a society and how that's happening all the time, you know. So really, really successful piece of work. And, you know, the body of work too, in general, you know, seeing it all together too, you know, you can definitely see the parallels there too.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And I'll just real quickly say that the talking without listening, you know, that really was an offshoot of the 2016 election and the before and the after. And I remember shortly after the election, I was trying to talk to someone who was on the other side of the aisle. And, you know, I just did a very political work. I do not like Trump at all, but I had told this person, if we could all just say to someone else who thinks something very different from us, what do you need me to hear? And I'll just be quiet. What do you need me to hear? What is it that you think or feel that I don't know, that you need me to know? And I'll just listen. And then after you express that, if you would afford me the same privilege where you listen and I get to say that. And it's so deeply hurtful that doesn't happen, that's not happening. So that was really, that deep, painful emotion was really infused into that work. So I'm happy that came across. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks.
I just want to say that when I loved talking without listening, and I particularly love that these are found materials and that you had to manipulate these chairs to get them in these positions.
Oh boy.
And I'm wondering if you thought about the shadows and the lighting and how those change the forms.
Yes. And that, so I'm an oil painter by training. So I'm a little bit more new to sculpture. So I will tell you, I didn't go into it thinking about shadow. It wasn't, you know, it didn't steer my decisions from the beginning. However, as it evolved, I realized the shadows are so integral to the piece, and you arrange things to tell a story, because the shadow, I mean literally and metaphorically, it has such a meaning to it in one's conversation with other people or oneself, you know, the shadow self or the cast aside self. The one with the legs that look like the bull joints, I did a lot of work with that to really have that emphasized next to the paintings with the matadors and these bulls being just skewered in really painful ways by the matadors. So yeah, thank you for asking that. The shadow was really fun to play with.
Yeah, good question. I'm guessing we'll probably go over a little bit longer if that's okay with you all. There's still some other artists that I'd like to hear from if you're willing, but I'm not going to call on you.
I'd like to hear from everybody.
I can go. I'll try to go quick. So hi, hello everyone.
Hey, Stacey.
I just in reflection to the Material Identity show, just trying to talk quickly about my work. I don't know, Sarah, if you want to pull up the pieces quickly, but kind of want to just bounce off of what Julie's talking about. It's fun how shadow teaches you, but also I think the material and the story it tries to tell when you start messing with it is interesting. I've been really interested in trying to make work that can speak to a persona or speak of a persona that's kind of sitting in a place where they're in this sort of strange place of wait, like they might be stuck trying to leave or trying to go. I'm interested in the tension of what you find just in your living room and right outside the window, right? Like we have all these edges that kind of keep us constrained, that we try to hold on to and we have nostalgia with. And I maybe get a little too obsessive with the tightness of all the details, and I'm really interested in upholstery as well. But I think if you can put a soft surface on something, someone's touched a surface similar. It might be their grandmother's sofa or, you know, a couch of a loved one where they've had a hard conversation. But I'm trying to explore different forms that can exemplify that tension. So it all started for me thinking about the idea of shedding something. So I started actually taking the like wooden trim from people's homes and cutting it at odd angles and finding these small hinges to sort of bend and create a strange twisted line, and then figuring out what I could do with that. And then this body of work has sort of evolved to have other elements of sort of bent spaces that you might find familiar, and then including either like a stick that's covered in velvet, or in the Dissension Hell piece, that like kind of burgundy red is velvet, but I've built that velvet by actually tying knots into rope and hand stitching the velvet, which is this really just fun seam to create. And I'm just trying to sort of venerate nature, or try to hold on to space. So quiet, maybe in contrast to the last piece, but still thinking about how those things from our home environments may speak to the conversations maybe we're having with ourselves instead of each other. So thanks.
So Stacy, what do you mean for you specifically when you say hold on to space? Because it seems like that's a really important
I guess
personal concept.
Yeah, I think I've just been sort of, I've moved in multiple areas across the country, and it's interesting when people say, where are you from? Because after you've been in a place for long enough, that's a hard question to answer, right? But I'm probably better able at stating where I am right now. And like when I try to express where I am currently, you find yourself talking about your past and your hopeful future, but rarely can you address the thing that you're at. And I find that in conversations with people. So each of these pieces is a reference to someone I know who shared a story about feeling sort of stuck or missing a place, even though they have awkward feelings towards it. So I'm just kind of exploring that. But because there's the cushion or a doily or some, something that's familiar to your home, people can't stop thinking about place. But I have some other forms that, just because of the size and scale of them being a little more intimate, people go, I feel that in my gut, or I feel that here. Like there's something about the fact that it's the scale relationship fits with that place on your body. So again, I'm trying to leave enough of it open-ended for interpretation, and it's just evolving as I go. But it's a good question.
These kind of like figures or portraits almost.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely are. But then they become open-ended portraits. By not saying they're a portrait of someone,
Right.
then it can be open to interpretation. Actually, another piece that's not shown here that's in the series is a piece called Jogged, but in parentheses after it says Megan's Edges, just because I had a conversation with someone after it where she's like, I just feel this piece. Like, this feels like my state. And even though I was thinking about someone else's experience when I made it, her language made me feel like she owned it in some way. So she became like a secondary part of the title, because we share these experiences. And I can feel that about so many other pieces that I see in the show. Like, I feel like I know the story of like, who told you not to cry, right? Like when I see something scratched into a form, right? Or I can imagine that dinner table conversation, Julie, like that. I have that conversation with family, right? Like it's, and I know that I wasn't the story that built it, but all of these pieces are relatable to our experience. So it's really great. It's a good show. I'm really excited that we're all together in it. So thanks for bringing us together.
Stacey.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
love, Stacey, how much character there is in each piece, because you look at them and I do see a personality, but then I didn't get place out of it necessarily, but the place just makes it spiral into this really much more interesting thing, because place so often does form part of our identity in a weird, strange way, like you said. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it.
Great.
Stacy, how do you source your materials?
Oh, I'm a scrapper. I mean, there's little bits of fabric that I found in my mom's closet, from just like stuff she left for like adding a throw pillow to this or that. I love going to thrift stores and finding fabric in places I've been. Like anytime I can find upholstery fabric cheap, I'm thrilled about life. And then I have like so much velvet in boxes, it's disgusting. I just can't get enough of it. But I'm from South Carolina, or I've lived there, and that was a place where I could find a lot of it. So I definitely get a lot every time I go back and visit. But the wood, you just walk outside. It's like, it's every walk to anywhere, I can find a twig or something or a rock that I want to add. But I am really trying to find used material where I can, so that maybe it'll carry the essence of that story with it. But there's just piles. There's piles ready to go, stories ready to be told. And I'm like you, I organize it by color, and I have themes and like little bins all around my studio floor. And yeah.
I want to hear about everybody else's work too, because it's all great.
I do too. Well, it's interesting how fiber heavy this exhibition became, and that was not me. It just sort of ended up that way, and I think that's interesting. But I love that there are, beyond glass, I think every traditional craft media is exemplified in this exhibition, including ceramics. So I'm looking at you, Arnie. And if you'd like to speak, it was really hard, I know, for the jurors to pick which piece that you entered. But I'd love for you to speak about your pieces, and I'll pull it up.
Oh, sure.
Please.
Thank you. So nice to virtually meet you all. So I'll tell you that the piece that that's in the show is from an ongoing series called Firstlings, and there are currently about 23 completed pieces within the series, and I continue working on them. And so I just very briefly, just in the interest of time, I'll tell you that I work with clay strategically because of its the ability, the fact that the material can be both incredibly reductive and constructive. I tend to build these pieces by starting by making several parts that I kind of put away to let them stiffen up, and then I begin to like three-dimensionally graft them together in ways that speak to some type of anatomical kind of logic or structure without sticking to an anatomical correctness. And I think for a long time, my work has been kind of conceptually rooted in this idea of wholeness. What does it mean to be whole? Be it physical, emotional, kind of a mental wholeness. And so these pieces tend to kind of appear to be in some type of metamorphosis, kind of transforming into something. And I tend to riff off of human, animal, and kind of otherworldly qualities in them. So I'm currently working, I got a bunch of new ones that I'm kind of working on towards a show here. I live in St. Louis, and towards a show here that I have scheduled in October. So.
Are these both yours that we're looking at? The kind of wool looking one on the left, and then the right, or
no, just the dark ceramic.
Okay, yeah. Cool.
So are you, when you're building these, are you like having these forms, do you have like an array of forms sitting out that you sort of build with intuitively, sort of almost like an exquisite corpse kind of assignment for yourself? Or do you sort of build these parts and let them dry, knowing you're planning on stacking them in this way to have this figurative form in the end?
That's a good question. I'll start with maybe between 4 and 6 parts that I will make and kind of put aside to let them stiffen up a bit, and then I'll start the piece by putting those together, kind of moving them around, cutting parts off of it, putting in other spots, and then the rest of it is built by hand on the piece. So the individual components kind of let me start to make like some type of forms that I probably would not embark on making on my own if I were to start it from scratch from the bottom. So yeah, the parts kind of give me some interesting possibilities that I wouldn't have thought of if I were building it whole.
Do you kind of like, do you see this particular work, is it somewhat autobiographical, whether or not you went into it intending that or not necessarily?
You know, I think sure. I think a lot of work is. I think that you know, I mean, we're kind of at a moment where we're looking for kind of truths, and so I think that we all kind of struggle with that. I don't think of them as being self-portraits, but all this kind of weird crap is in my head. So yeah, yeah. For sure.
I just wanted to say, your sense of form. I mean, I just want to turn it around and look at it from all different sides, because just by even seeing one side of it, I know the deliciousness of the rest of it. You know, it's very figurative in nature. It's very beautiful.
Sure, thank you so much. Yeah, I tried to make them in such a way that you really have to kind of walk around them, that they kind of evolve as you're moving around them. So that's great. Thank you.
I've actually felt that way with a lot of you guys' pieces. Like, it's like, I want to go there. I want to see them. I want to move around them. I want to interact with them. You know, I want to interact with you guys. We are, I guess.
Thank you.
Arnie, it just seems like Rodin to me. It looks so figurative, like a smaller figure holding this huge figure on its back. I've looked at Rodin quite a bit in France, and it just has that sort of monumental sort of feel, even though it's not large in scale. It feels like the smaller figure is really holding up that big figure. Yeah. I don't know if that's just, I mean, I'm looking towards the screen trying to see more details. Is that something that you're conscious of, or did it just sort of happen? Or
are you asking if I'm conscious of the figurative quality, or if I'm
figurative quality? And to me, it looks like a smaller figure holding something huge, a much larger figure on its back. It
yeah,
has
I mean, yeah, I think that I think when you're working with the figure, what's really, really hard is that we all know what they look like. And it's really easy to make, to end up kind of making work that's somewhat, you know, either too derivative or just kind of too kind of stuck into what we are predicting. And so I really embrace kind of weirdness in them. And so if there, you know, moments where like a figure kind of becomes like another figure within that structure, I think that those moments are exciting to me, because there's something incorrect about that. And that we think so much about bodies as being like their correctness, whether it's beauty or ability or physical wholeness or whatever. So the weirder that they can be, I think that to me, those become like exciting moments that I probably would not have conceived of on my own. So.
You know, it's kind of hilarious is I live in Miami. And so the view that I have, if I'm looking at it as a figure, when you just said what you said, the first thing I thought about was the Brazilian butt on Miami Beach, you know, and how bizarre that is, and how people are doing that to their own physical bodies, you know, creating these fantastical images called female now. Really, it really translates in a contemporary, super contemporary fashion.
Well, great. Thank you. It's good to hear that. Thank you.
Hi, Arnie. It's Alicia. There's so much emotion here in the figure. There's a weight, a heaviness that I feel looking at it. And I think that the moment you captured, like with all this gesture, because it's really hard to freeze a moment in time in clay. And interestingly enough, I don't say this with malice or not being kind, your looseness is admirable in that, you know, you find that moment or that emotion and you freeze it. And there's a virtuosity that it takes, and it's beautiful. And I wonder, how do you create a conversation? Do you absolutely want somebody to say, this is the emotion I have, and do you play off that, well, yeah, or, you know, it's up for your interpretation? Because I make photo, you know, like representation, like iconic figures, a hat, and I reproduce it, and there's a message behind that. And I choose to do that because I thought there's technique, there's method, I need to learn this. There's many things that are really cool about it. And of all the mediums in art, clay was where I felt the loosest. And then I start making, you know, cast representations of things, and I still can't be loose. I'm holding myself to like these, you know, I want to be able to say I can do this, right? So you create emotion very gesturally. It feels loose, but it's so powerful. That's my message.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you. I guess what I would say is I'm not interested in the pieces kind of having a definition. So I'm not really interested in assigning them one thing. I think that artwork is best when it becomes speculative, when there's kind of like a reaching through the darkness where you're not exactly sure where things are going. And so I do think I appreciate so much hearing you say that they are emotionally charged. That means a lot to me. And I think that I just really appreciate that. I'm not really trying to encapsulate one specific thing, and I'm not trying to cop out, you know, by saying that. I'm just trying to, I think that the nature of the fluid nature kind of lends to this transformative quality that I think the work that I desire the work to have, to feel like it's changing into something, even though we don't really know what it's changing into or where it's kind of starting from. And so if those kinds of qualities strike you in that way, then I'm very appreciative of that. So thank you very much. Thank you.
I just want to encourage everyone to look at your full body of work. As a juror, I was able to see some of the other pieces, and you know, they're all very impressive. So definitely, if you're like what you see, I mean, and this is the same goes for everyone in the show. You know, we weren't able to include all of the pieces that were submitted, you know, like Sarah said, due to scale and size. But Arnie's in particular, there was one that looks like this, like bull or bison, you know, and it's like, you know, there's a lot of different things that are happening in his sculptural work. So,
thank you.
Since my piece is right next to his, maybe I should talk.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so this is weaving, and I'm so curious. Did you guys put it on? Anybody from the gallery? No. Oh, okay. So all of my weaving, not all of it, almost all of it, yeah, all of it is off loom weaving. I grew up in Ohio, in Cleveland, and in the woods and on the Great Lake Erie. And I was sure I was really a Native American Iroquois girl. And so the technique of off loom knots and weavings come from, you know, taking a branch and being able to weave on that. So all of my work is off loom. I can show you a little frame. I mean, basically, sorry. You could take this frame or a frame the size of my window or whatever that you build, and you create the warp and you just go using knots. My grandmother's from Ireland, and so one of my grandmothers. So I learned a lot of Irish techniques too, and I liked the juxtaposition of the two. These pieces are meant to be taken, to be, as I put it, worn on the wall or worn on your body, making reference to the mink stoles and that, you know, women wore. I can remember being in church and this lady in front of us every Sunday had these minks that were connected by their mouths that she wore around. And I was sitting there, I just wanted to touch them, you know, and at the same time I was so repulsed by them. So I'm also a painter. Like if you had to ask me, you know, what are your disciplines? What are your disciplines in your practice? I would say works on paper and fiber. And actually, for me, the fiber pieces are painting. Because if you look at the pieces closely, I'm not going one fiber to, sometimes I may have 15 fibers that I've like chosen, just like we do with our paints, you know, and pull them together and make knots with them or weave with them, and they tell stories. This particular piece is titled Shoreline. So with a lot of my work, because I'm also a gardener and I'm really interested in native gardening and planting only what would grow there naturally to sustain pollinators and butterflies and hummingbirds and bees. You know, I mean, it's like super important in our environment. You know, you can't embrace every single issue, but I know that physically I can go in my backyard and plant this and have the experience of the, you know, like I had yesterday, of this neighbor that came by whose child is fascinated with bugs. And so I showed her, you know, chrysalises and all that. So I found ways, when you look at this, you don't say, oh, shoreline, it's not a painting of a shoreline. But what it is about is oil spills and the plumes of algae that we have going on. And like if you could touch it, the silvery parts are like netting. So the netting that gets wrapped around so much of our manatees and birds and all of that. So yeah, so that piece is about shoreline. And I actually am a big word person too. I'm a writer, stream of consciousness poetry and all that. And I really have been investigating the definition of the word craft. And so the concept of an intention of purpose, you know, with skill, and then adding like hopefully ingenuity into it. And I also really love the sisterhood of women throughout history. Not to peg, but it's the truth. We were the gatherers, we were the planters, we were the, you know, weavers, we were the, so I always find a real huge connection when I'm pulling these knots. I mean, I feel like I could survive if you dump me in some environment, because I could make clothing and shelter and all these kinds of things the same way my sisters and mothers and, you know, all of us did across the world and, you know, throughout humanity. So that's a big part in my life, life's work. And it also talks about, like, we're bad, we're humans, you know, we're screwing up the earth. We know it. We do our best to minimize that, but each of us has a human footprint. And so I would like my art to be part of my footprint that speaks to how, you know, like if somebody got this piece and actually worked, and it's so cool when you wear it, because it just, somebody in that gallery has to put it on their bodies, or I'll be so sad. You know, like that top part wraps down, you can tie it around, you know, and, you know, we can all say whatever on our t-shirts or on our masks or this, but walk around with something really funky that's gonna draw somebody's attention, and you're like, oh yeah, well, this is what this is about, you know? And I find that pretty cool. Currently in my craft, weaving has taken over, and if you can see, like in the background, the piece, I've been weaving masks, and like they're huge, like the black one is the size of my sliding glass doors, and the name of that piece is named after a stone. I've been named obsidian, and obsidian is a stone that wards off danger and seeks truth. You know, there's all these like really things that we need right now. Like, what the hell is really going on? Why don't you tell us the truth about the virus? Why don't you tell us the truth about what's going on in Oregon? Why don't you blah, 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 you know? And there's probably about 3,000 hand beaded strands on it that are like refractions of light. So hopefully it refracts the truth. And the one on the right, I've been weaving masks called I Can't Breathe, with the fiber colors of COVID and saran wrap, so that, guess what, you can't breathe. This is put on your mouth for 7 minutes and however many, 46 seconds. But it also makes reference to COVID, you know, where you can't breathe, and because of what's going on, people are chosen who are going to get the ventilators. People are chosen who are going to get in care. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so, there's just so much going on, I think, in, well, especially Karen in your piece, and then drawing these parallels, I think, with many of the pieces in the exhibition to, you know, really topical, you know, discussions that are coming up that none of us foresaw, you know. So I think that's really interesting how you're bringing that into your work and your current work and the work that you're developing. So thank you for sharing that.
I want a picture of you wearing it.
Okay, it's a deal. I had no idea it was wearable. Now.
Yeah, it says it in my work. Yeah.
Great. Oh, good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Karen.
Great. Jacob, let's see, who do we have? Becky, we haven't heard from. Nathan and Jacob, I think we lost Janet's late where she is.
I can go very quick.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Let me see if I can share my.
I can share it if you'd like. I have some, yeah.
Okay.
Oops. I think I can. Go ahead and start talking and I'll get there.
Okay. So I am a book artist and I make a conceptual book. So like usually my books are not regular books. So this secret, the title is like a secret and the secret. I put them together. And growing up, like my dad always tell me like, you're never gonna smoke, smoking is bad, and he smokes a lot. So like I learned how to smoke, and like when I had like a creative block, and I usually would smoke. And then I noticed like it's not the behavior of smoking, actually it's like you are seeking for a personal moment or personal space to reflecting on things. And after talking to other people who smoke, or just like observation on people on the downtown or on the street, they will take like a moment to reflect on the ideal or the truth, the things they love, they dream, and what they want. So this cigarette box is made of handmade paper of cigarette filters. So as a book artist, the paper are very important to me. And also as Chinese, like Chinese invited the process of making paper making. So like as the material itself is really important to me. So I created this cigarette box book with 20 cigarettes butts as book pages. And all the cigarettes has been smoked. So like all the story stays in the past, it's fade in the air, and what's left is the what exists. So it's then I put the title in, which is like the text in, which is boys do not cry, because like how the society requests men, and requests how men should be tough and be strong. So it's kind of like a destiny. So it's a box with 20 faded cigarettes. Yeah, and I also like with this body of work, I have another 2 cigarette box, and one of the box is totally made of cigarettes. So it's like the cigarette tobacco leaves in the box. Yeah, that's it.
I love 2 things together. I absolutely love your idea and how you express it, and that idea of that moment. It's really about this moment where you can be safe and reflect, and it's yours. And then formally, they're just beautiful, and they look like this little moment that's just your own, this quiet, magical thing that exists somewhere in the past, and then you can reflect in the present. I just love these.
Thank you. I love your work too. Learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jacob.
Thank you.
I'm loving hearing all of these background stories. It's one thing to read an artist statement and look at a digital picture, but hearing it from the artists yourselves, this is just awesome. I love it. Thank you so much for being here.
What's the smell of this work when you get close to it? Because I feel like from a screen, I'm in this protective space, but it's got this bit of
does.
And like it's precious, but then when you get close, I imagine a push.
It does. It smells like a cigarette. I even have a bottle of mixed cigarette ashes. After I install it, I usually will spray some cigarette smells on it. So it smells like ashes. So I try to represent the death, the deadness of like it's kind of like the end of a conversation. The cigarette butts is like the period of the internal conversation I'm having with myself. So it's kind of like the end of the story, and different people kill the cigarette differently. So it contains like the action of different identity as well. Yeah.
And you christen it with its smell again after it's been shot.
Yes. So I want to emphasize like because like usually when you smoke, you are thinking, you let your mind go. So it's not like the things really like maybe it's the things troubling you, the things you desire, or dream, but it's just something like you are subconsciously thinking about.
What I love about it so much is cigarette smoking is probably one of the things people judge people for the most.
Yes.
They could be, chugging Coca-Cola, huge Coke, or Slurpee with whatever, or doing whatever. But it's like, oh my God. And I just love how you turn that around, and then you put Boys Don't Cry. It's just like, yeah, what else? What else am I doing wrong here? Just pour it on.
Thank you. Thank you.
I get it so much. It's so cool.
Thank you so much.
It's brilliant. It's so well done. And I think it's so funny because people go, oh, the smell. And then
They do.
I actually
Really,
haven't noticed any overwhelming smell from this piece in the gallery. So thank you for that. But you know, but it does add that you want to have a bit of that smell. That is all part of it. I'm glad that you spoke.
Yeah, it's a sensory. Thank you. Thank you, guys. And thank you for having me in, as a part of the show. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Jacob, did you say that each cigarette had a different story?
Yeah, like a different moments. And also I have like another whole body of work is painted cigarette butts on handmade cigarette paper. And it's a collection of different people's stories or dreams. Yeah.
Okay. So the story in your cigarettes is just what you were thinking about when you smoked it.
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Thank you. Yeah. It's
Thank
beautiful.
you. Thank you.
I'd love to see you smoke different brands from all over the world. They would be different types of moments.
I can collect the different brand from different people as different stories. Smoking is bad to your skin.
True. Thank you. Nathan, I think you can see that you are up.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So my name's Nathan. This ring is part of two pieces total. So the series is called the Homosexual Gaze, and it includes this kinetic hot dog ring and a pair of hot dog glasses. And it was created as kind of like a whimsical, fun way to comment on checking out men in the grocery store. Because when I found myself grocery shopping, I was always like, some like really attractive people here. And so that's kind of where this piece came from. And, you know, through exploring different materials, I came across laser cutting acrylic, which I thought would be kind of a really fun, almost like pop art way to bring that hot dog symbol into jewelry. And then so like on this ring, it's fairly oversized. So I would say it's about 6 inches tall, and it's actually kinetic. So on the base there, it spins around. And that's kind of the idea to get people's attention. So if you were wearing this ring, it would be very eye-catching to other people.
So can you wear it? I mean, is it functional? Kind of?
You could wear it. It'd be really large, but the actual ring part at the bottom is sized like a normal ring.
Very cool.
We tried it on. It's awesome. Yeah, it's just a really fun piece. It stands, you know, at least this tall off of your hand. So I love that play of, you know, it's that look at me. It's that, you know, objectifying then others, you know, with this idea of the hot dog. It has a toy-like quality as well. It's whimsical in that, and the kinetic nature of it. You know, you kind of want to play. We've had our gloves on, of course, so you know, being very careful with the piece. But it does. You end up sort of holding your hand like this too. So there's this, you know, whole kind of dance that can go along with it. I think it's really interesting.
Oh, it's awesome.
Have you been doing more pieces with laser cutting like this, or was this the right answer to do with a pop art version of thing, but you tend to usually use different materials?
So I've actually been doing a lot of laser cutting in the past couple of years. And I think a big part of it too was graduating from university several years ago and not having a traditional metalsmithing studio. And so this has really allowed me to make materials and cut designs out without having, you know, soldering and all those compressed gases and stuff. So I've done a lot. And I've also really enjoyed working with the mirrored acrylic because dealing with stuff like, you know, the gaze and people's view, it's kind of fun on some of my other pieces where I've laser etched into mirror. So as you look at the piece, you're actually looking at yourself with, reflecting as you're viewing it.
That's great. I look forward to seeing other explorations. I'll dig in, find you elsewhere to look at it. It's great stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say, like, as a gay person, I love the honesty of this piece, and like, I think I love the hot dog, the symbol itself. I feel like you should discover or explore more about the subject matter and like just how how things can be objectized or sexualized in general, and like it's just very fun, and I love the humor in this piece. Yeah, and I even thinking you can have like hot dog kind of like doing this weird movements in a way that would be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. That would be fun. Yeah, and actually I have a pair of hot dog earrings that they're pretty eye-catching.
Hey Nathan, I love the construction of this. I think it's super pop art, and I think to subvert through pop art, you know, is pretty intense. We bring a human experience out of the binary, right? We take it into real life. Homosexuals looking at one another in the grocery store, and it's a hard subject to approach, you know, within a home, or to say, you know, I met somebody at the grocery store. So to bring this human experience in such a beautiful, you know, form, the construction of it, the color, awesome. Good job, Nathan.
Thank you.
I don't know if you ever considered, I live in LA area now. I don't know if you ever considered trying to connect with the film industry. I think the piece is so whimsical and fun and yet beautifully constructed and designed. I just want to say, living many years earlier in the Bay Area in San Francisco, there was a Safeway in the marina that was considered a very big pickup joint. So I don't think you're completely out there. I never was involved with that Safeway. I didn't live there, but it was just kind of a joke that the marina Safeway was where people went to meet each other. So it's
Before Tinder, there was always Safeway, right?
But I don't know, it just seems like you could break into the LA market in some way.
That'd be really awesome.
A great idea. I think we lost Laura Sharp Wilson, unfortunately, but we have not heard from Becky yet. Hi, Becky.
There it is. Okay. Yep. I am here at Artworks, and I wish you guys could see the show in person, because it's really cool, and everything together makes its own experience, you know, and this type of thing is so 3D and so tactile, and that it is just a really cool experience, I think. And I had a really hard time not touching everything, which is kind of a problem of mine anyway. So this is mine. I call it Diary, and I consider it a little book. It's a small piece, and to me, it's a little book kind of stuffed in a box. All of my work is very personal and very about my emotional life. I just can't seem to get away from that. And I pretty much always work with paper, and often have the red thread with it. And so much of it is about, at least to me, it's about chaos. It's about trying to hold things together, hold that chaos together, control, like I know one of you guys was talking about. One thing that several people have mentioned that is really a part of my work is being obsessed with something, and just that need to do this over and over and over again, you know, tearing apart all these little pieces of paper and nailing these things in and running this thread around it. I have, for some reason, I'm really disturbed, guys, sorry.
He's really not.
I have this need, it seems, to wrap things so much, and I think it is a control thing. I think it's trying to rein in something, you know, that isn't in my real life, and so I try to do it in my art, but that's kind of what it's about.
Is the process of the wrapping therapeutic? Is it cathartic? Does it increase your anxiety, or it abates the anxiety?
It does. It really is something, and I guess part of it's that repetitive motion.
Yeah.
Like you guys were talking about the knot tying and all that type of thing. I have to be wiggling all the time. I have to be doing something And I think that's part of it is, you know, it gives you something to do.
Well, it lends itself well to beautiful artwork.
Thank you.
It's really interesting.
You know what it reminds me of is, okay, so there's like 3,000 beads on this piece over here. And I have this other one, labradorite, that has like over 5,000 of these beads. But like I'll look at each one and it's like, ooh, this needs to go with this. Ooh, this needs, and it's the same thing I think as you're wrapping. It's just like you're making sense. Oh, you know what? Leonard Cohen has a line, and it is making objects out of thought. So, right?
Yeah.
So what's going on in what I call the actuality of your day-to-day life? Somehow by choosing this bead right here, this is what I meant to say. And it's the same thing, like you take one of your fibers and you wrap it, and then you wrap it. Is it kind of like that with you?
It is, and in the papers that I pick out, and these all have encaustic on them, and so each one was dipped in it, and so it has a little bit of that smell too, which I love, the beeswax smell. So.
Yeah, I do wish you all could come see the show in person.
It's pretty cool.
How much longer is it up?
It will be up through the end of August. So let's see, August 29th is the closing date. So if you want to come out to lovely Loveland, Colorado and have some afternoon thunderstorms, which was going on today, and beautiful sunny, dry weather. So a little different than y'all down in Florida.
Oh God, Sarah, I have to tell you something. This is like confession time, old school Catholic girl, not so much now. One of my favorite, I mean, if you want to find the Garden of Eden, go to Loveland, Ohio. It's like amazing. It's like one of my favorite places on this earth that I've yet to experience. And when I saw Material Identity, I was like, oh, I like that. Oh, Loveland. Sealed the deal.
Nice.
And I'm so glad because the vibe and the energy is, I mean, this has been like our little 2 hours of a beautiful love land. And I just am so grateful. Is there any way that we can get each other's emails or something? Should we choose? I think you need to do another group show, by the way.
Yes, thanks. We will be doing a international juried show every year.
No, this group show.
Of what? Yeah. Of all of you. Yes, I know. I wish. Right now we're booked until 2022, which is insane. Just because we had to postpone things. But no, I mean, really, it was like I was saying at the beginning of our discussion, I feel like this could have been so many different iterations, you know, could come out of this what idea and with the applications. And again, you know, to echo Jessica, it was really hard for the jurors to pick even just one or two pieces from each artist when, you know, you could submit, I think, what was it, up to 7. And so, yeah, I wish our gallery space was 10 times as big and we could include even more. But you know, as a director here at Curator, I will definitely be keeping all of your information. You may hear from me in the future. That's to be pulled into something else. I was just absolutely thrilled with the quality of the work. Just really amazing. And I can't thank all of you enough for, you know, participating, for your application, for your support, for being here in the Zoom chat. I had no idea how many people would sign up, and this is awesome that we were able to talk for as long as we have and get in depth about all of these things. I think we've covered, you know, politics and social critiques and material and craft and what craft is. I mean, we've really just touched on so many things. One thing I was remiss to not mention at the very beginning is I have recorded this discussion. Probably should have said that at the beginning. So please just let me know at all if you would not like me to disseminate this to, online. I will send it to all of you who have participated for sure. But if for any reason you do not want yourself on our website, I have no problem not putting it up there, but you should all know that. Okay.
I just like
Sarah, thank you so much for putting this all together. And, I mean, one of my favorite things about having a show and curating a show is the opening reception, where you get to talk to the artists and you get to, explore. And this is such a new way to do it. And I think it's so interesting to see the relationships in real time all together. We can have the same conversation. That doesn't happen at a reception, so I really appreciate the time that you guys took to be a part of this and to listen to each other and just share. It's just fascinating, because not being able to physically be with the work, we can all be together in our thoughts, which I think is compelling and kind of a whole new thing. So I just really appreciate all of you and the work that you're doing. And I support you fully, and look forward to seeing what you guys do next.
I just have one
Thank you, thank you, Jessica, so much for being a part of this. And during, as I said at the top, Jessica and Jisan looked over, I think it was 365 separate images to pick this work. It was a daunting task, and really, I think, also fun, I hope. But I really, really appreciate all the work that you and Jisan put into it. It was a really great collaboration and experience. So thank you so much, Jessica.
I just want to say something, and it's a closing thought. I don't know if any of you have been following any of the events or speeches or whatever about John Lewis, but as his body was being laid into the ground, a double rainbow crossed over the sky.
Wow.
So I thank all of you for the joy, and double rainbows times how many of us are here? And this is why we're artists, right? I mean, they had cafes in Paris in the 30s and 20s, but we have Zoom.
Right.
That's right.
I'll take it. God bless everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you, you all. Glad to know you all. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you
Have a good
everybody.
night.
In touch.
Bye.
Later, we'll talk.
Bye.
God bless. Thank you so much.
Thank you.